Safety meeting to order. Today is Monday, February the 5th, 2024. I would ask all of the members of the Budget and Finance Committee to please put your committee member sign up, as well as all members of the Public Health and Safety Committee to please put your sign up as well. Councilmember Evans, would you like to say anything before we get started? No. Good, okay. All right, so we have one item on the agenda today. The one item on the agenda today is RS 2024-158, Porterfield and Evans approves an amendment number 2 to a sole source contract between the Metropolitan Government of Nashville and Davidson County and Fusus Incorporated to increase the value of the contract. As you all know, we were initially having a presentation today from both MNPD as well as the Metro Community Review Board. However, this legislation is going to be withdrawn with a brief comment about the legislation being withdrawn. So we will not have the presentations today. Director Deeks, would you like to explain the reason for the withdrawal, or would it be better for MNPD? You good? Okay, you are recognized.
Thank you, Chair, both chairs, members of the council, Vice Mayor. Just a very brief story. On Friday afternoon, the mayor called me into his office late and said he would like for the police department to negotiate with Fusus to delete the feature in the software that permits the police department to view these privately owned cameras. For the time being, the Fusus contract expires at the end of September, sometime that last week of September. So he had 3 asks. One is, can we delete the function in the software that permits the police to have real-time access to these private cameras? Can we keep the price of the contract under $250,000? Can we come up with a systemic fix so that we're not in this place again? So over the weekend, there were negotiations. Fusus and the police worked together very well. As of this morning, the police have literally unplugged, is my word. I'm not a tech person, but they have unplugged Fusus. They have disconnected from the software program completely. There will be an amendment to the contract that through the end of September, I believe it's the 26th, that the functionality of that camera access on the privately owned cameras that have been voluntarily made available to police, that function will be disabled so that it will not be functional. And then the other piece of this that the mayor asked for was some sort of fix. And the fix that we have come up with is Michelle Lane Hernandez has again worked to come up with a system in procurement where if there is a contract that procurement identifies as potentially being subject to the council ordinance that says there needs to be a public hearing and council approval, that those contracts will be flagged with a flag, and then Metro Legal will pay close scrutiny to those. And so that process is being implemented. This contract will be up for renewal. The police intend to renew it. And what I want to make clear is that the feature that's being disabled, the entire program's been disabled. The feature that will be disabled until the council approves a new contract is the one that allows access to cameras. There are other things in this software program that the police use that do not provide real-time access to private property cameras. Once Fusus comes up with the mayor called it a kill switch, a way to disable that, the police intend to reactivate Fusus to the extent it helps their other systems, but it will not enable the use of the camera technology on the private property owner's property. So that feature, which has created some interest in the council and the media, the bottom line is that feature is being disabled and it will not be put into place again until the council has a chance to consider it with a resolution on a new contract that will come before the council sometime in August or September. I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Director Deets. We have questions from Councilmember Toombs and Councilmember Huffman and Councilmember Evans Siegel. Let me make a little list here. And Councilmember Evans, we're going to go to you first prior to, since you're co-chairing this committee. I did want to give Chief Gilder the opportunity to speak on this as well prior to us taking questions. And one thing, Chief Gilder, if you can clarify what, because I think there's been a lot of confusion and people in the community think that Fusus is only cameras. Can you clarify what other uses there are for Fusus that MMPD will be using the technology for between now and a council vote? And could you also clarify, and this question may actually be for Director Deets, but if we could clarify, because private access was mentioned more than once, will cameras be used for any public access cameras? Will Fusus be used to access any public cameras? So Director Gilder, you're recognized.
Thank you. So to the first part of your question, anything additional that I wanted to add? No, I think the director covered it in large part. The one thing I would say is that we intend at the time, one of the concerns that or points that was brought up as this was being discussed was would we have a freestanding Fusus policy? I've talked to a lot of you, and I've addressed the fact that we do have policies in place that cover the use of Fusus. But hearing that concern, we have started the process, I think I even mentioned this before, of researching it. So I fully anticipate when we do come back and we are ready to present, that I will also be presenting a Fusus policy for you as well. Your other question about the way Fusus works, so a lot of focus has been paid to the private integration cameras. Fusus also integrates existing police systems. So what it does is it can integrate, everybody's been on Broadway and seen the big blue flashing lights on those cameras. Those are the public city cameras that the police have access to and are integral in managing, large scale events and things like that. So those can integrate into the system. Those are not private cameras. Those are city cameras that we've had for over a decade. And it also integrates the GPS in the police vehicles, and it integrates the computer-aided dispatch system. And it puts those things into a map. So these are all things that are available, but you have to, close windows and move around to find these things. And Fusus overlays those assets into one place and allows us to provide additional information to responding officers who are going to calls for service. And so those features, the other features, are all things that we still have and would still continue to use. It would just suspend the access to the private video feeds.
Thank you, Chief Gilder. We will start with Chair Evans. You are recognized.
Thank you. I just had a question for Director Deets related to the contract. So is there any cost savings related to the contract and kind of the change? Or are we being held, I would assume, to the full cost of the existing agreement?
Director Deets, you're recognized.
I may ask Chief Gilder to weigh in on this because I have not dug into that question. There will be negotiations around this amendment, which will apply to the contract between now and September, whenever it ends, but I'd ask Chief Gilder to respond.
Chief Gilder, you're recognized.
Thank you. I don't want to get too far in front of it, but I will say that in discussions with Fusus, they understand the situation. And so, yes, I think what you're going to see is an overall cost savings because with that functionality removed, it's removing value on the contract.
Thank you, Chair Evans. Now, Vice Chair Toombs, you are recognized.
Thank you, Chair. So, and I may have lost my train of thought. So if there's an active police investigation and someone has private ring footage or other private camera footage, can that information still be shared with police?
Chief Gilder, you're recognized.
Thank you. Yeah, 2 points. One, Fusus never actually integrated with residential video, like things like Ring. But to your point, if you are a business and you have video of a crime, for instance, yes, you can still get that to us. We go back to the same manual process we had before. What Fusus did was, if you were signed up, you could send that video directly to the police department, and we could preserve it as evidence in the criminal case. Instead, what we're going to be going back to is we have to go back to the business physically. A detective gets sent out. They get sent out there with a thumb drive. They hopefully find the person who's on scene who knows how to work the camera. I say this from personal experience. And hopefully get that video downloaded and then bring it back physically and store it as evidence.
Councilmember Toombs, any additional questions?
That's all I had, Chair.
Thank you so very much. Councilmember Huffman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chair. I think this question is for Director Dietz. Regarding the individual businesses that currently have contracts set up, and I'm assuming, and Deputy Chief, this may be a question for you too. If I as a business have a contract right now in place and I have a camera set up, what happens to me? Is that a breach of contract for me? Or could you just explain that?
Director Dietz, you're recognized.
Again, I'll give my legal analysis and then ask Chief Gilder to talk about the practical aspects of it. There are, as I understand it, about 1,000 private property owners who have registered their cameras with Metro. That's a voluntary action. Out of that 1,000, a little over 300 have voluntarily said, yes, I'll provide you real-time access to my cameras. It's a voluntary contribution to the police. I do not believe there's any way that this decision going forward through September will result in a breach of contract claim back against Metro.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Chief Gilder, would you like to respond?
I would say that we met with Fusus. They were going to start reaching out. This is all relatively new. So they're going to start reaching out to their customer base that's affected. And again, that's a negotiation between them and Fusus as to what's going to happen. But we made them aware of the situation.
And as far as the real-time video feed goes, there's audits in place. Is that accurate?
Yeah, so anytime someone from the MMPD logs into a private camera, there's an audit trail that is created on the MMPD side, and then it also alerts that camera owner and lets them know that that camera has been accessed, exactly who accessed it. So if it's me, it says Chris Gilder on there, and preserves that audit trail as well.
Thank you, Chief Gilder.
Thank you.
And to frame the conversation, because we want to make sure that we are abiding by what we're saying, because this is going to be withdrawn, we want to keep the scope to what is happening with Fusus from now until September. MMPD will have the opportunity to present on the new contract, as well as the Community Review Board will have the opportunity to present. So I just want to make sure that we are keeping it fair to both presenters that were supposed to be here today. Councilmember Benson, did you have your hand up? You're recognized.
Thank you, Chair. I think this is for Mr. Wally Dietz. So if I'm a business owner and I found out that there was a program that I could get involved in so that the police could access my camera, but it's my understanding I had to pay $200, and that I understood the contract that we had was a good contract and it was active. What happens to me that I spent the $200? I understand that if we just cut it off and there wasn't money spent, maybe there's no liability there. But if I had an understanding it would be a program ongoing, does that change our liability at all with the $200, with money being spent, I guess?
Director Dietz, you're recognized.
Look, I think if we face that claim, there would be a number of defenses, including the argument that the contract was not valid and not validly executed. We have legal defenses to that claim. To me, the difference is a timing issue. That property owner who invested in that camera can still get that information to the police. It just has to be done manually as opposed to automatically uploaded. So it would be hard for me to predict that that property owner would be successful in a claim for those damages.
Councilmember Benson, do you have an additional question? Councilmember Evan Siegel, my apology. I accidentally skipped to you, so you're recognized.
I don't mind, but thank you, Chair. And I just want to clarify, this also applies with the MOU with MNPS as well, and those cameras, because I think they were operated a little differently and that we only stream from those if certain calls were made. Is that correct?
Director Dietz, you're recognized.
That is correct. Those cameras are not streaming all the time. There are limited circumstances, primarily a really severe threat where those cameras are triggered.
Councilmember.
And I know this is coming back and probably doesn't need to be said, but this is really complicated because it's a lot of different things in one contract. And I have a feeling that colleagues might want more than like a 2-week notice when it's time to renew, and I would appreciate any lead time we can be given.
I appreciate that. I know we have that objective and the police do as well. I think you'll see the rollout with sufficient time for it to be fully vetted.
Thank you, Director Dietz. Thank you, Councilmember, for that question. Councilmember Huffman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be brief on this. I want to follow up on something that my colleague, Mr. Benton, had hit on. And Mr. Dietz, thank you for explaining the process for that you can still submit a video via an unsecure way versus through Fusus. Does that possibly open us up? And I'm going to give you a hypothetical here. Let's say I'm a private business owner and my contract is now null and void, right? I've got to figure out a way to get my video feed to the police if something happens. If I send this video to, let's say, John Smith, who's the lead detective for MNPD, and I misheard him and I sent it to the wrong email address, does that open us up to any liability at all?
We're going to go to Director Dietz. However, I believe, Chief Gilder, can you clarify? Did you say it was going to actually be a physical jump drive and not an email in which people can submit videos? Can you clarify that question to make sure that we have that on the record before Director Dietz answers?
Sure. We do get people that email video to us. It is a lot of times, depends on how big the video is. So sometimes they do come via email, and sometimes, a lot of times, it's a detective going out physically to a location to collect video. So we get it both ways.
Thank you, Director Dietz.
The short answer is no. There's no liability there. The property owner voluntarily sent the information. It was a mistake. The property owner has not as a property owner has not done anything that would give anybody a cause of action. If someone's identified in that video, the property owner has no liability, in my opinion. But more importantly, Metro has no liability for a mistake made by someone trying to communicate with the police department. I appreciate the concerns about potential liability. I'm just having a very difficult time imagining a situation where liability would attach.
Thank you, Director Dietz. Councilmember Huffman, do you have a follow-up?
Yeah, thank you very much. My concern is more that I had a way to securely send it to the police, and now I don't. So, thank you.
Thank you so very much, Councilmember Huffman. Councilmember Preti, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This question is for Deputy Chief Gilder. You mentioned the record that is created whenever an officer or an analyst accesses information. Under MNPD current practices, are there any regularly conducted audits of access or any of those records that are created?
Director Gilder, you're recognized.
Thank you. So, We might go into that for a couple of reasons. There could be an audit that occurs. We do conduct departmental audits. A lot of times, that sort of thing might be discovered via a complaint, whether it's sourced internally or externally. But we have had that happen before, not with Fusus, to be clear, but, other departmental data. Because like I said, our departmental policy covers whether it's physical files or digital files, there is a requirement to have a business need to access that. And if you're doing that improperly, like a curiosity search or something like that, that is a violation policy.
You are recognized, Councilmember.
Thank you. And so just to clarify, knowing that like if there are complaints or anything that an audit is done, is there a policy in place or is there anything in place that dictates whether or not there are just regular audits, like a once yearly audit or anything like that?
Yes, so we actually, I'm sorry.
So you recognize.
We do conduct annual audits, not of the entire department. We do them units or divisions at a time. And so that is part of actually my bureau conducts audits department-wide.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you so very much. I have several questions, but I want to make sure that the two committees have their opportunities to ask any questions first. All right, seeing none, Councilmember Huffman actually sparked a question for me with regards to, are we opened up to any liability with us no longer having that contract? Director Deets, are we opened up to any liability for Fusus being operated without a valid contract that was approved by the Metro Council?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Once again, for someone to bring a claim, they would have to have standing, meaning that they suffered an adverse incident as a result of this contract. And they would have to prove the basis of the claim, why they were damaged, and what damages they suffered. Lawyers hate hypothetical questions for exactly this reason. It is very difficult for me to imagine a potential case where a claimant can say the fact that this Fusus agreement wasn't approved and perhaps it should have been approved by the council, that resulted in something that caused me damages, dollar damages that are compensable in a court of law. I just have a very hard time imagining that situation.
Thank you, Director Deets. I appreciate it. I also appreciate you all's efforts to ensure that that we don't get ourselves in a situation where surveillance technology is being used outside of coming before council. So thank you all for correcting that. My next question is for Chief Gilder. This was with regards to Councilmember Evan Siegel's question about MNPS. So just for clarity's sake, are we saying that from right now until September, until the end of the contract, prior to council voting on a new contract, if there is a situation in which an active shooter or something along that line, which of course we hope that does not happen in our schools, but if something like that were to happen, MNPD would still be able to use Fusus in MNPS, but it would only be in a situation of a very high danger situation like that. Am I understanding that correctly? Oh, I'm sorry, you're recognized.
So the MNPS system has not been integrated into Fusus yet. That is the goal, that is the plan, again, to have everything in one place but to save time in a response. So pausing on this is not going to affect that because we still have access in the event of a mass attack type situation, some serious threat. We can still access the MNPS cameras via the MOU.
Thank you. And I know we talked about this, Chief Gilder, but I just want to make sure for the viewing audience, because I did have some parents to reach out with questions about this. Will MNPD use this if there's a fight at a school or some low-level offense? Will MNPD have the authority or the ability to tap into MNPS cameras?
No, again, these are for access in the event of a active, ongoing threat. We are not using these to provide general security or to look into minor violations of school policy or law, like a fight. These are things like an active killer type response, a person armed with a weapon that has entered the school, that sort of thing.
Thank you, Chief Gilder. And I believe this to be my last set of questions. I want to go back to the private access versus public access cameras. How many public access cameras does MNPD have access to?
I believe the number of public cameras are around 130, I believe. And again, that's, these are the cameras that you see, like, for instance, primarily downtown with the blue lights on them, although they're in some other places, but they're very distinguishable. They're not hidden. They usually have a sticker on the side, tell you it's Metro Police, they have a blue light. It's those cameras.
Okay, so those cameras will still be used by MNPD with the Fusus technology. Are they still only tapped into on an as-needed basis? Like in the event of a level 4 or level 5 crime, I believe that may have been how it was described to me. But are those, when does MNPD use Fusus to tap into the public access cameras?
Well, we've used those cameras. Like I said, they've been in place over a decade. I don't have the exact start date that they started utilizing those or putting those in place, but we use them for a variety of purposes. They are usually used in response to when there's been a call for service or to look for information in relation to a crime that's been reported to us. But we also utilize them for real-time information with, things like traffic flow as far as, like downtown is concerned. We have a lot of mass events, special events that occur. We use it to monitor for any kind of, suspicious activity, that sort of thing. But there's not somebody just generally sitting there watching a camera 24 hours a day. I wish I had that kind of manpower, but I do not. And so those cameras, like I said, that's generally how they've been utilized in the past. It's usually when we have some type of call for service that arises, we realize it's within the vicinity of a camera, and that camera may have captured some evidence of that offense.
So will you all be accessing those cameras using Fusus, or will you go back to the way that those cameras were accessed prior to you all going into a contract with Fusus?
Well, I not had a lot of discussion with Director Dietz, but my understanding is that the piece that implicates the concern here with respect to the ordinance is the private camera access. It's my understanding that the public access cameras could still be accessed through Fusus, but again, that just merely places them in one place. We still have access to those cameras outside of Fusus, but it just makes it easier for MNPD response to see that camera there on the map, where the call for service is, where the responding officers are, and tap into that.
Thank you. And Director Dietz, can you just clarify for the record, what's considered a private access camera? Are those cameras on businesses and on residents?
Theoretically, it could be a residence or a business, but I don't know how many, if any, residences are actually connected to Fusus through MMPD.
Thank you. Director Gilder?
The answer is 0. There are 0 residential cameras connected to Fusus. We intentionally do not want residential cameras. We have only asked for access to business commercial property.
Thank you so very much for that. Councilmember Huffman and then Councilmember Preti.
This is my last question. Thank you, Chair. Similar to how I sparked a question for you, you sparked a question for me. I hate I even have to ask this question, but we are in these times, and there's been an uptick of anti-Semitic behavior in and around Metro Nashville. Similar to the emergency situation where the police could still access the cameras at MNPS, would that be similar with somewhere like the Gordon Jewish Community Center, which is a Fusus customer?
You're recognized, Chief Gilder.
I do not think we will have access to that real-time camera absent the Fusus agreement. I'll have to double check on that, but I don't believe we will. MNPS is a separate system that they've acquired, that they have given us access to via that MOU. That would be a private school, which my understanding was utilizing Fusus to allow access in the event that it was needed.
Thank you, Director. Councilmember Huffman, did you have a follow-up? Councilmember Prepty, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This question is for Director Dietz. We've been talking a little bit about contract implications for those who have previously, for those private entities that have entered into a contract with Fusus. Under sort of just the hypotheticals that have been posed with contracts damages, would it be fair to say that those private entities would be able to, if they are leasing the equipment, would have standing to no longer exercise or perform their duty to pay for that leased equipment under a legal theory of frustration of purpose of the contract?
Director Dietz, you recognized.
Thank you, council member. Nothing like a lawyer to play stump the director. Frankly, council member, I have not reviewed those contracts. So it's very difficult for me to opine on that. I would need to review the contract. I would need to see what exigent circumstances are provided for in the contract. But I do believe the theory you have articulated is a viable theory for an individual to raise.
Thank you, Director. Councilmember Prepty, you have a follow-up?
Yeah, just a brief follow-up. And so under this hypothetical legal theory, this does not expose Metro to any potential liability. It's just with that private entity being able to no longer perform the duty to pay under that contract between them and Fusus.
Director Dietz?
That is my opinion tonight. If I review the contract and I hear more about a factual situation that might give rise to a claim, maybe my opinion would change and I would edit that. But I would also caution too, we're 2 years into this Fusus agreement. Well, we're 1.5 years into it. It was a 2-year contract. We're only talking about 6 months before the contract ends. And before that contract ends, there will be a presentation, a resolution for this council to approve a new contract with Fusus that will have, the police will have some policies to discuss at that time. I think we're talking about a very short period of time where a user who installed a camera is going to be frustrated in their purpose. And the question is that worth bringing a lawsuit over? That's a practical question. But the legal theory, I understand where the question is coming from. I just think it's very, very unlikely. And at the end of the day, I do not believe, based on what I know tonight, and all of this is fast breaking over the weekend, based on what I know tonight, I do not believe Metro is facing liability, and certainly not in any material amount.
Thank you, Director Dietz. Councilmember Weiner, you are recognized.
Thank you so much, Chair. I have one question, is for Chief Gilder. Do you believe that we are safer or less safe today for the next 6 months without this piece in the policy? Thank you.
I will allow that question, Chief Gilder, but again, we wanted to stay on the context of what they're using. And the reason why I want to stay on that context is because we have not allowed the Community Review Board their opportunity to present the data that they prepare for us. So it's not fair to kind of put the thumb on and weigh one side of this argument and not hear the other side of the argument. So I just want to be very careful that we're not unintentionally doing that. And I don't think that was your intent, but I just
It
want
was
to make
not.
sure.
Yeah, it was not, so thank you. Let's rephrase the question then. Has there been a difference in the security of the community before the contract was initiated a couple of years ago and today?
So I think what I can answer for you in relation to your question is, do we feel that the private video integration adds safety and security to the residents of Davidson County? And I think the answer is yes, it does, or we wouldn't pursue it. If we felt like it didn't add a public safety value, then we wouldn't be seeking to expend tax dollars for that purpose. So.
Do you have a follow-up, Councilmember Weiner? All right, with that, it appears that we do not have any additional questions. So to recap, as of today, and I'm gonna ask to make sure that I'm stating this correctly, as of today, Fusus is not being used here in Nashville. There will be an amendment to the contract that will remove the use of cameras and surveillance, with the exception of the public access cameras, which have been up for the last 10 to 12 years. We will then get a new contract this fall in which the council will have the opportunity to deliberate. We will still have a public hearing so that the community can weigh in. We will still have MMPD and the Community Review Board to come and give a presentation to this body so that we are informed on the technology prior to voting on this legislation. Director Dietz, did I kind of summarize that correctly?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think, not to parse over words, because I'm not totally familiar with what else Fusus does. What I am very comfortable representing to the council that as of today, Fusus is not being used. That if between now and September, Fusus can guarantee their other services can be provided to Metro without having the feature that gives the police immediate lifetime access to private property owners' cameras, then that part of the contract will go forward. There will also be a contract amendment that will formally delete the provision and eliminate the ability of the police to use these cameras on private business properties until this is brought back to the council. But I would phrase it that way, just to be clear that there are things with this contract that I'm not sure I fully understand.
Thank you, Director Dees. I appreciate that. And my apologies, Chief Gilder. One last question. To be clear, this is not stopping MMPD from getting camera footage from residents or businesses. This is only stopping MMPD from accessing live footage at businesses without having an approved surveillance contract with Metro, from the Metro Council. Is that correct, Chief Gilder?
Yes, live footage and the ability to export the video directly to us via the secure Fusus link. So we would be, in essence, yes, we can still go, you can email me video, not me, the detective, and you can, the detective can go to the business and physically retrieve the video still. That's correct.
Thank you, Chief Gilder. And with that, we're going to end this meeting. Thank you all so much for your time. And we'll turn it over to our chair for our next meeting, but this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.